Hey friends, welcome to or welcome back to my channel. If you're new, I'm Kristen, and today I am doing a set that has been literally months in the making in terms of my thought process and designing. But yeah, we're finally here. We're doing a nail set inspired by Hellraiser 2022. Throughout today's video, I'll be showing images from the movie, so viewer discretion is advised because some of those images might come across as like gross or might make you feel uncomfy. And honestly, same for the nails. So this is a weird set as per usual, but I hope you enjoy it. But yeah, that's your warning for today. Hellraiser 2022 is both a sequel and a reimagining, which is also known as a requel of Hellraiser 1987, which was directed by Clive Barker. I'll touch on it a little bit more in a bit, but if you've seen the original, you know that it's very scary and very visceral. It always made me very uncomfortable with just the bloody, fleshy, visceral quality of everything. Both films use contrast lighting, like heavy washes of blue and red. And specifically in the newer one, the contrast of those two colors really merge together to create this very, very deep purple that looks black. And I figured out a way to get that effect through, or to get that inspiration through by using this, what I'm going to call a bright blood red, and then layering a dark blue jelly over top. I thought I was so clever. But you can see, this is just the first coat, but you'll be able to see it looks almost black, but we know it's a very, very deep purple. And yeah, I love it. I love that touch. So, the original movie is an original idea and book that was written by Clive Barker, and then he later went on to direct the actual movie. Clive Barker has such a unique voice and unique style in the industry. Like, I really don't think anyone can truly replicate his style. I would describe Clive Barker's work as horrifying, usually epic, kind of fantastical, fantasy based, deeply sexual, usually, visceral, textural, romantic, psychological, and in the case of Hellraiser, religious themes as well. So, good old Clive is definitely like a horror icon at this point, and you might recognize some of his other work because he also wrote the book that Candyman is based off of, and he directed another movie called Nightbreed, which I don't really like that movie at all, really, but it does have a cult following. And he also did a screenplay for a nasty little movie called Rawhead Rex, if anyone's ever seen that one randomly. But yeah, he's still kicking too. He is currently 70 years old, so but I don't think he's making movies anymore. He did actually have a producer credit on this remake, and it seems like he supports the remake as well. I This movie has such bad reviews that I really don't understand it. Pretty much any review that you find on YouTube is going to be kind of negative about this requel remake, and I feel like it's really like uncalled for and that people didn't really like open themselves up to it as much. I feel like everyone just wanted the original Hellraiser, the Clive Barker style, but you can't replicate his style. Like, the new director had the right to infuse his style into the story, and I loved it. So you're getting a positive review of this movie, one of the only ones out there. I swear. So let's talk about the new director, David Bruckner. And he is an up and coming director. He doesn't have that many directorial credits yet, a couple of short films and anthologies, and a handful of movies, including a movie called The Night House, which I wasn't really a fan of, but he used a lot of heavy red and blue lighting in that movie, and I feel like some of the style from that movie carried through into Hellraiser. But he also did this movie which is called The Ritual, and it is one of my absolute favorite movies of all time. I had no idea it was the same director until after I watched Hellraiser, so maybe I am a bit biased because I seem to really enjoy this director's work for the most part. I should have maybe explained, but on this nail, I'm doing like a pinched, pierced flesh effect. Like if your flesh was peeled in and pinched. Oh my goodness, you'll see. You'll get the effect, but yeah, that's what I'm up to. So yeah, the requel took the major themes of the original, in my opinion, and kind of toned down some of the really heightened elements, such as like the heightened sexuality of the original is toned down in favor for more of a character study of our main character, who we will get to in a minute. But I really don't think that we lose that heightened sexuality as it kind of comes through in other areas, in the atmosphere, in the casting, in the music. So those sexual elements are still definitely there, but they're just different. And I think that that has more to do with the director's style, maybe? For Bruckner's version, he also toned down the gore a lot, and I think that might have contributed to people really not liking it. I don't know. I don't really know why people didn't like this movie, but I was appreciative that he toned those elements down because in the original, I love the original movie, but I find it hard to rewatch because the gore elements are just so like overwhelmingly gross. And it makes it hard to rewatch that movie for fun, if that makes sense. I mean, I don't know who else is watching horror movies for fun. I do. But I don't want to be like disgusted, you know? So, yeah. I like that David Bruckner's version has more deep tones. It just has a couple of moments of really intense gore instead of being kind of intense throughout the whole thing. So, less is more in my personal taste on this. Okay, I've got minor spoilers ahead because I'm going to get into the storyline a little bit, give you a little synopsis. So we follow Riley, played by Odessa Azion. She's super cool. I have never seen her in anything else, but she has this like really fresh, sexy, like doesn't give a fuck attitude, and her hair is like so cool and curly and bouncy, kind of similar to the main girl from the original movie. But yeah, a lot of the cast are like younger up and comers. It's a very understated cast. There's not a lot of big names that you would recognize, but all of the performances are good. So we follow Riley, who's a young woman who's struggling with addiction and drug abuse in general. She's trying to stay clean and lives with her brother and his roommates right now. She is hooking up with this guy that I think that she met in like her 12-step program. He's catching feelings for her for sure, but she's more aloof about everything. The love interest is named Trevor. He's played by Drew Starkey, another younger actor who I'm unfamiliar with, but really liked him in this role. What I'm doing here on the nail is working on a design I made that is inspired by this character. And I wanted you to have some sort of visual in terms of what I was doing and what I'm going for because this is kind of a trust the process situation. This thing ends up looking really weird pretty much until the end, like until it's like put with all the other nails. It's kind of, yeah, I have a lot of thoughts about this one particular nail, to be honest, but we will get to all that later. So Riley and Trevor come into possession of this intricate puzzle box thingy. Riley becomes pretty mesmerized with it and decides to take it with her. She hangs on to it. She gets home late that night, ends up in an argument with her brother. She leaves the apartment, finds some drugs, and gets high in a nearby playground. She's tripping out on like a merry-go-round thing, and she's exploring the puzzle box, kind of touching it and pushing the parts around until it changes shape suddenly and a sharp blade shoots out of one of the sides. She isn't struck by the blade, but she starts having visions of these supernatural creatures that we know as the Cenobites. They need a blood sacrifice for every time the puzzle box changes configuration. And if it's not Riley's blood that they take, then she's going to have to provide them the blood of somebody else. So the Cenobites are godlike entities that come from a place where pain is considered ecstasy, and they seek the highs of sensation. They seem to take extra pleasure in human suffering, and it's all just a big game to them. They urge a person on to collect blood sacrifices for 6 configurations. Now, before we get into the puzzle box information and the lore, let's take a look at the Cenobites. We're going to start with the priest, also iconically known as Pinhead. I'm sure you've seen this imagery before. The whole Pinhead thing is very iconic from the original movie. Now, for the requel, they changed up the gender, and I love Pinhead as a woman. They're played by actress Jamie Clayton, who received a lot of praise for her performance in this. There's the Gasp, who's played by Selena Lowe, and this character design is the one I like the most and the one I was most inspired by. Now, the hard thing with this nail is, I take this really weird character design from the Cenobite and it translates to my nail not exactly how I expected. And I did sketches and everything of this before I made it, but yet I was still shocked by how squid-like it looks at times. And it's also kind of giving hybrid penis vagina monster, and yeah, it's just not totally what I wanted, but at the same time I made it and it is what it is. So yeah. I've said this before, but when I make nails inspired by really weird movies, they usually turn out really weird. So it's just par for the course, I guess. But stick with me. I know it looks weird as fuck. It's gonna look weirder before it looks better. But we do get there, I promise. So all the Cenobites have their bodies flayed and mutilated beyond any human capacity. So that's the vibe, basically. Okay, back to the Cenobites. So next we have the Weeper. Yikes. The Sphinx. Very skin stretchy. The Chatterer. Personal favorite. So freaky. The Mask. And the Mother. Now, David Bruckner got a lot of shit for the designs of these Cenobites. Lots of people thought they looked dumb. I pretty much disagree because I loved the reimagined designs, but I did, however, rewatch it again with more attention paid to the creature design, and I do have to say that some shots of Pinhead's chest are giving fancy pie vibes. So I understand the criticism. I hope you are all enjoying this video so far, and I would really love it and appreciate it if you took a moment to like the video and subscribe if you're new. And I also love hearing from you all, so please leave me a comment, whatever you want to comment. It really just kind of makes my day and keeps me motivated to keep making videos like this, if I know you enjoy them. So yeah, let me know. Okay, so let's move into reviewing the puzzle box configurations. I love these, so I'm excited to go over them all. Each configuration represents a choice. So, whenever the human player reaches the sixth configuration, they're granted access to an audience with God. And the human can choose a gift granted by these quote unquote gods. But it's definitely one of those be careful what you wish for situations because the gifts are not what they seem, and these gods may actually be demons. Okay, so the configuration slash choices are as follows. There's lament, which represents life, lore, which represents knowledge, laudorant, which represents love, liminal, which represents sensation, Lazarus, which represents resurrection, and Leviathan, which represents power. Pretty neat, huh? You know, it's not neat, me adding these piercings to this nail because it made it look like eyeballs. And my sister said that it made it look like a happy squid. And yeah, not my like finest design work adding eyes to this weird looking thing. But I am going to change it around a little bit. For now, these little spiky things, the little ends of the metal are sharp, so I'm going to add a little glue dot at the end, which I thought was a clever solution for that. So I don't know about you guys, but I cannot unsee the face. Brig. Yeah, at this point I'm basically like, well, I made it. I made it. The fuck. Anyway, I painted the eyes black so you can't really see them. And they're not eyes, they're supposed to be a piercing. Uh, so I painted them black so you can't really see them as much. I did the pinky nail off camera because I was experimenting a lot. It took a lot to actually get to this state, and it's inspired by this glass ceiling sky, night sky shot that's featured throughout the film. And you'll see here how I basically got that effect. And this pat paint is amazing for line work. It's much better than any other white I've used for line work, so that's awesome. But yeah, I wanted to mention the film is heavily stylized with intricate geometry. It has a very like Art Deco feel to it, and that intricate Art Deco geometry set and everything really elevates things in terms of richness. Some of the sets feel so grand and luxurious, but also kind of like confining. I guess I'm thinking specifically about the villain's mansion, and I haven't even mentioned our villain yet. He's been kind of chillin', unseen in the background for most of the movie. But yeah, so here we have an actor named Goran Viznik. I don't really know him from anything except he had like a long standing role on ER. I barely remember that show, but you might recognize him from that. But in this, he plays Roland Voigt, an eccentric, kind of disgustingly rich guy with a passion for seeking out power. So Roland actually reaches the sixth configuration and, got his audience with God. And he chose liminal, which represents sensation, if you recall. And let me tell you, those Cenobites fucked him up big time. So he's been trying to go through the configurations again so that he can get his audience with God again and plead with them to basically undo what they've done to him. That's his big master plan. And I'm not going to go any further into the storyline, so there is lots for you to discover if you end up watching it. I actually almost ended up not watching this movie because usually Hellraiser sequels aren't very good, and usually requels aren't very good. I'm looking at you, Scream. And plus, every review that I saw was mostly negative about this movie. But luckily, one of my horror besties told me that it was so good, and I checked it out. I was seriously hooked from like the sound and the vibe immediately. And now it's like a huge personal favorite of mine. So, yeah, one of the last things I wanted to talk about is the score. So, the original 1987 Hellraiser score was composed by Christopher Young, and it's incredible. If you've heard it, you know that it's really epic, orchestral, and definitely iconic. We might not consider this all the time, but the score is so, so important to a film and the overall storytelling. So for the new Hellraiser, they kind of had a huge challenge to live up to the original score. And the director teamed up with his longtime friend and associate, Ben Lovett. Lovett has worked with Bruckner on all of his other films. Plus, they've been like friends and associates for like 20 years. So they have good ways of communicating with each other. Obviously, they work well creatively. So Ben Lovett studies the original themes of the original score and then started kind of twisting and changing and experimenting until a new sound started to emerge, a new sound that was more unique to David Bruckner's style, but also has all these influences of the original Christopher Young score. And I watched this little interview with the two of them, and it kind of showed the creative process of them creating the new sound. And this guy was literally like scratching on piano chords and like messing up instruments, trying to create something that sounded really like dark and experimental. And ultimately, it became something really, I think, unique to this film. I'm kind of obsessed with the sound and the whole vibe of this movie. And I don't really know a lot about music, so it's hard for me to break down why it's so good, but just trust me. The score is amazing, and I hope the composer is super proud of his work. So, this is going to sound formal, but this is basically kind of like a video essay. So, in conclusion, I think that Hellraiser 2022 is a really heartfelt reimagining of the original. I think David Bruckner and Ben Lovett really infused their creativity into all the original themes, and they did that with like respect and love for the original. I think it's a work of art. Obviously, because I'm featuring it in a whole video, but I think it's totally a work of art, completely underrated. And I honestly hope that, like, over time, it becomes more of a cult classic or people start to appreciate it more for what it is because this director and the composer deserve a lot of credit for this work, and I just really don't think they got that. So yeah, that's the lowdown on Hellraiser 2022. Go watch it. Go look it up and watch it. And let me know what you think. Hopefully, explaining the movie also helps explain the nails and gives them more context. I think it does. I think it's worth it for you to know where all the inspiration comes from. And yeah, I'm about to do the reveal. I did the other nails off camera, so we'll take a look at those. Eep, here they are in all their weird glory. I made this little display stand for them. I'm not totally sure if I like the display stand, actually, but it's not bad. And yeah, let's go over the nails one by one because I did change a few things. So I added this blade from the puzzle cube onto the pinky. I just made that with the clay. I'm attaching these with sticky tabs. I love this giant blade on the pinky, it's so fun. And here we have the odd one of the group, the Cenobite-inspired nail. It looks kind of gender fluid too, which actually is supposed to be intended for the Cenobites. Anyway, this middle nail I made with clay. It's supposed to be like a close-up of the puzzle box, but with blood seeping through the crevices. And then I added one of these chains because in the movie, chains come out and kind of like spike or hook onto people. So yeah, and then of course we've seen this one, the pinched flesh nail. And then the thumb, which you also saw, but it's all top coated now. Not quite as detailed as I would have liked, but it's abstract. And I think the red bottoms are really cool on these too. Okay, yay, I'm creeping in with the finished set. You know what? It was a journey and I was questioning what the hell I was up to, but it all came together and I think it looks sick. I think it looks so badass and I need to know what y'all think. Is the Cenobite nail too much? Please let me know your thoughts, and if you've made it to the end of this video, you're amazing. I really appreciate you. Take a moment, like, subscribe, share the video, leave a comment, support me on Ko-Fi if you want to, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!